Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Andy and I'm continuing to discuss Dante's Inferno. As you've watched in the last few number of videos, we are still on the 8th circle of hell, the Fraudulent, and we're now on part 7. Still a good leg of the journey left, so try to tough it out. So, today we are going to talk about snakes. A particular kind of snake, a thieving snake. So, when Dante leaves the 6th ditch in the Malabulges, he climbs out of it, and then when he looks down into the 7th ditch, it's too dark for him to see down there, even though he squints really hard, he can't see anything. It's just too dark and shadowy. So he asks Virgil to take him down there, and so they climb down in there, and then Dante looks around, and everywhere he looks, he sees snakes everywhere. When I hear this, I think of Indiana Jones. Why does it have to be snakes? So, as usual, there's a bunch of naked people in there, and the snakes are grabbing onto them and biting them and all sorts of stuff. And Dante sees one guy in particular, and walking along, and then a snake bites him. He bursts into flame, and then he turns into ashes. And then the ashes form back into a human body again. So, as Dante describes, it's like a phoenix bursting into flames and being born again from the ashes. But this is not a sign of rebirth or resurrection. This is an eternal cycle of doom. Because this man was a thief. He keeps getting his form stolen from him over and over again, and so he's doomed to live this sort of life, or death rather. So now I'm going to read you what he says, because Virgil asks him who he is, and he says, "Not a very nice guy, very nasty." My guide then asked him who he was, to which he answered, "From Tuscany, not long ago. I poured down into this savage throat, more like a mule than a man. I chose a bestial, not a human life. I am Vani Fucci, animal. Pistoia was my worthy lair." And I to my guide, "Tell him not to flee, and ask him what wickedness pushed him down here, for I knew him as a wrathful man of blood." And the sinner, who heard without pretending, turned his face and his attention to me, and looked the picture of despondent shame. Then he said, "It gives me far more pain that you should find me in this wretched state than did being whisked away from the other life. I cannot refuse to answer what you ask. I have been placed this far down because I stole some things of value from the sacristy, for which some others were once wrongly blamed. But that you may not find pleasure in this sight, if you are ever outside these dark places, open your ears to my prophecy. Listen. Pistoia first is emptied of the blacks. Next, Florence utters practices and people. From the valley of Magra, Mars draws forth a vapor involuted with thick clouds, and in a storm of bitter turbulence, there will be fighting on the Campo Casino. The vapor will suddenly burst through the mist, and every wight will be wounded by it. I have told you this to make you suffer." When he had finished saying this, the thief raised his fists, with both thumbs sticking through, and cried, "Take that, God! I saved it for you." From that moment on, the serpents were my friends. The one entwined itself around his neck as if to say, "Not another word from you," and another round his arms, retying him and clenching itself so tightly in front that he could not make the slightest movement. Oh, Pistoia, Pistoia, why not order your own burning, and thus put an end to life, for surpassing your seed in evil doing? In all the dark circles of hell, I never saw a spirit so contemptuous of God not even in the one who fell from the walls of Thieves. Without saying another word, he fled. Vanni Fucci, very spiteful, thieving scum of the earth. So that prophecy that you heard him talking about was that he was prophesying that Dante's political party would be triumphed over by the bad political party that he was against. So there's the Black Guelphs and the White Guelphs. Well, the Black Guelphs were the political party that Dante was against. So how the story goes is that Pistoia was the city that Vanni Fucci's from. They would be kicked out, but then they would come back and fight with a vengeance, and they would kill many of the White Guelphs, which are Dante's good political party. And Vanni Fucci is making this prophecy to make Dante squirm. Pretty nasty guy. He says that he can't bear to see him looking down on him in this filthy prison. So he says, well, if you're going to see me suffer, I'm going to make you suffer. Trying to rob Dante of his dignity. And now, the story does not end here, but there's a lot that happens, so I'm just going to summarize it. So, next, Dante sees Cacus, the centaur. Now, if you remember from back in the Circle of Violence, at the very beginning of the 7th Circle, you see a bunch of violent centaurs there. And they happen to mention that one of their brother's centaurs is not with them because he's farther down in hell. Well, here he is. Here's Cacus. Cacus, in Greek mythology, was known for robbing and pillaging and bringing his loot and his victims back to his cave, where he killed them and he took what he wanted. One day he was foolish enough to rob a demigod, Hercules of all people. So he robbed Hercules, and Hercules went to his cave and destroyed him. Serves him right. So here he is now in hell, being allowed to torment people like he did when he was alive. And he even has a little fire-breathing dragon riding on him that is burning people left and right as he walks by. And then Dante sees 3 other men, and he sees something that blows his mind and horrifies him. So with Vanni Fucci, he was bitten by the snake, and then he turned into ashes, and then he'd come back again. Well, with these guys, something different happened, and even creepier. What happens is that one of the guys is attacked by a snake, and then the 2 forms of the snake, it bites him in the face, in the cheek, and then it's like his form starts to melt and change, and the snake's form is melting and changing. Dante compares it to how fire is burning a piece of paper. Fire is burning along the paper and it's turning brown, and so it's like that, the 2 writhing forms of the man and the snake. And then when the whole process is all done, it's a very lengthy description Dante does. But at the end, the snake turns out to be a man, and the man has turned into a snake. So thus, they have stolen each other's form. So literally all of these snakes there in the pit are actually humans. They're not just plain old snakes. Pretty creepy, huh? It really illustrates what the sin of stealing does. It robs people of their livelihood and their dignity. Something that is rightfully earned. People rightfully earn their wages for what they make and sell. But someone who gets it illegally by stealing is robbing them of their dignity and their livelihood. And so these snake fiends are robbed of their own forms. They rob each other of their own forms, and it's a constant vicious cycle of hate and malice. So next time you see the FBI copyright warning against piracy, remember that when they say that piracy is not a victimless crime, it really does make sense, especially spiritually as well. Because when one steals, they harm someone else, but they also harm themselves by leaving a stain on their soul. And of course, stealing is bad enough that it's one of the 10 commandments. It's the 7th commandment, thou shalt not steal, of course. And this particular thief that we talked about, Vanni Fucci, like stealing from the church, that's even more below God. I mean, that's just really bad. Now, also keep in mind that thieves do get forgiven if they ask for repentance. Prime example is Saint Dismas, the thief that was on the cross next to Jesus. He recognized that what he had done was wrong, and that Jesus was being punished alongside him, but he was innocent. And so Jesus lets him come into heaven. But the other thief on the other side of him, he decided to remain in his sin, and so he was not forgiven. And then also think of the tax collector named Zacchaeus, written in the Holy Gospel, how after Jesus stayed with him, he decided that he was going to give back all that he had stolen. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do, to give back everything you've stolen. And that's really the only way to remedy stealing is to give it back. Because otherwise, if you're still holding on to it, then you still haven't fully relented of your sin. So next time you're thinking about getting a pirated video to watch or pirated music on the internet, try to think about your soul before you do it, so you don't stain your soul. Although thieves are no longer punished by death, it still is a felony, and worse still, it's a mortal sin. So I'll leave you with that, and so whatever you do, stay out of hell.